I'm Michael Harney from Orange is the New Black, and I play Sam Healy. You're listening to my interview with Elaine Goodman on gogoodman.com.au.
Through college, you considered becoming a social worker and a priest. Why did you settle on acting?
Well, during the years of my college, I was partying a lot. I was drinking a lot, so I wasn't wrapped too tight in those days. So I did a lot of good work. I did a lot of volunteer work in prison reform and civil rights. But I happened upon an instructor who was from the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London, and he took me under his wing my last 2 years of college, and it was under his tutelage that I became an actor. And I became inspired. He taught me about the working under the desired inspirational state, and it was pretty cool. I really got turned on to doing it. My dad was a performer, and I did a show, I did a workshop, I did Cyrano de Bergerac, and I felt very free, I remember. And it was really, took me a long time, like 15 years to kind of recreate that for myself, be able to work in that state again. So I think it was just something, it just happened by accident. I took the class as an elective, and I wound up pursuing it once I got back home into New York City. I was studying, my first 2 years of college, I was studying social work, but it was more hands-on. As I said, it was volunteer work and prison reform and civil rights. And then when I got my last 2 years of college, it was all book learning. And I was really bored to tears with that, so that's how that happened. And then the priesthood didn't happen until, it was about 21, I guess, and I got sober, clean and sober then, and it was right after that I started to experience, I started having authentic spiritual experiences, and I was really drawn to becoming a priest at that point. But what I found out through my own course in prayer and meditation was that I wanted to have a family. So that's how that went down.
So this addiction through your late teenage years, through your early 20s, was that due to, I guess, feeling a bit lost and not knowing what you really wanted to put your heart and soul into?
Well, I think it was genetic. I think that alcoholism is largely genetic. We found that to be true now with research. So it's just a disease. That's how I look at it. I think that it was a way to cope with a lot of different aspects of my life where, a kid might turn to art or athletics or something. I would turn to addiction. And unfortunately, that's a very common thing. But I do think it's genetic. We found that to be so. It's not anybody's fault.
And you studied acting intensely after school when you decided on your path. You studied acting intensely for 7 years under William Esper and Phil Gushy. What did they mean to you as an aspiring actor?
Well, they were really important to me. Bill Esper, I worked with him for about a year, and I devoted myself so fervently to that work that I really the way I look at it was I sort of broke my defense block, so that all very varied emotions could come through me. Prior to working with Bill, I was kind of like a big blue-collar kid from Queens. I grew up in Queens, New York, and I was kind of like a block of ice, you know. Nothing could get in, and I was sensitive, but there was a lot of stuff that I was holding on to, and of course, being an artist at this stage, you really need to learn how to be as free as possible in terms of allowing all the emotional channels to be opened, allowing all of the ways of expression, psychological and emotional expression, to be opened up so that they come through you in an organic state. And that means that you have to drop a lot of the, I used to say, it's kind of like dropping your crutches. You know, you don't need them anymore. You can just be, you can respond truthfully to the given circumstance from your own point of view. So it's certainly not, it's learning to not be conventional. It's learning to respond organically or in an uninhibited way to the circumstances of a particular scene, and most of all in a very personal way. So Bill taught me that through a series of exercises that were created by Sanford Meisner, and I really worked diligently on those exercises with him, with Maggie Flanagan, who worked with him in those years. So I used to do an extra class every week, 2 extra classes every week outside of my studio time to really understand organically what I was being taught. And so I worked diligently with him. And then after a year, I said, man, I got to take some time off. I was burned out, I had so much material inside of me that had been expressed. And he supported me to do that. And I went and I did plays for a year, and then I went back and I did the second year of the work that Meisner had created with a guy by the name of Phil Gushy, who was really wonderful and very different from Bill. But they were both master teachers of the Meisner technique. They both had worked with Sanford Meisner for, I think, 25 years. Each of them worked with them for 25 years over at the Neighborhood Playhouse School of the Theater in New York. And Phil was really laid back, and he really saw something in me. And after I was with him for a couple of months, he asked me to work with him as a teacher. And that was, to me, a really great honor. And I didn't feel up to the task. I thought I would blow it, But I sat in my chair and I shook for the first couple of classes. But I think I had 7 students. And started to realize, hey, I think I can do this. And so we became partners for a while, and long story short, I wound up having close to 120 students at one point before I started to taper down and get back into acting again.
When you say you grew up in Brooklyn, you were a bit of an ice block in that you didn't really let anything in, and I guess you didn't really let anything out as well. Was acting kind of a way to express your emotions without you having to express them while being yourself, which you may not have felt as comfortable with?
Yes, I grew up in Queens, by the way. I spent a lot of time in Brooklyn.
Oh, sorry, I meant Queens, yeah.
That's okay. But I really grew up in Queens, and then we moved to Long Island, although I spent most of my time in Queens.
You've been all around New York.
Years. Yeah, I've been. I would say that I remember Meryl Streep saying one time, acting is so great because you can live through all of these circumstances and never have to pay the consequences for them, and that's really true. So I think in that regard, I was able to, I had a volatile temperament just because of my personal history, right? Yeah. And the volatility of the temperament was a perfect fit for the circumstances of different playwrights, and for me as an artist, learning how to embody the emotional circumstances of particular plays and characters, that was a real gift, because it really sort of revolutionized my life. It really helped me to become a whole person. So it was very therapeutic in many respects, although I don't believe that acting class should be therapy, and I don't believe that acting teachers should be therapists, because they're not. But it wound up becoming therapeutic for me, because I was able to release a lot of emotions that I had been carrying around for a long time as a result of my youth.
Do you still remember and use a lot of what you learned in acting school back when you were studying, or it's more of, or do you feel you gained more from actually being on a set or being on stage?
Oh no, I use everything. The foundation was, it took me, all of that 7-year period and all of that 8-year period teaching. It took me 15 years to solidify the foundation for me. Meisner is, I kind of look at him like a Zen master. I kind of look at him like this guy that came across this amazing technique, which was basically Stanislavski's work at the Moscow Art Theater, Michael Chekhov, Vakhtangov, and he Americanized it with Lee Strasberg and Stella Adler and the members of the group theater. And so the way that he created his system was really wonderful, because it really taught you how to get the attention off of yourself. It was genuine. In an interview one time, Peter Falk said, when you're a young actor, you have a lot of people trying to reach into your pocket, and, they just want your money. And when he met Meisner, he said, well, this guy was authentic, what he was teaching, what he was talking about, was authentic. And so people that were really searching for something, which young actors and actresses, that's what we do. We're searching for meaning, and searching for a really genuine artist to teach us a real genuine technique. So when you were with Meisner or with Bill Esper or with Phil Gushy, you knew that you had a genuine teacher. You knew that by watching the work that went on in the class, that it was real. I remember after a couple of months working with Bill Esper, I watched an exercise that took place, and it really happened. There wasn't a false note in the whole thing. And then we went to scene work, and it carried over, the exercise work carried over into the scene work, and I thought, wow, this is what I signed up for. This is why I became an actor. So that's still a big part of me. It will always be a part of me. It revolutionized my life. Meisner's work, it transformed me as an individual. It's a blessing and a curse, because it deeply sensitized me. So I'm awake in my life. And any artist that really has devoted themselves to a craft, I think, will say that they're really awake. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, wow. Very, very much so. That you still keep those lessons that you learned back in college and through acting school, and you still take them with you all the way through your career. And after studying acting for 7 years, you opened up your own acting studio, the Michael Harney Acting Studio, where you were a bit of a teacher, and you also acted in close to 80 plays, acted and directed in 80 plays. What was the thought process behind opening your own acting studio? Was it a way of getting your own jobs without having to use an agent, or was there something else that was bigger than that?
No, I had tremendous respect for the teachers that I was with, and I couldn't get any work as an actor. And I thought, I really had fallen in love with the art of acting, so I thought this is a way for me to maintain. I can keep practicing the craft as a teacher, and I can direct, and maybe down the road, after establishing a studio, I can act again, And it really happened because Phil Gushy, the guy that I was teaching with, who was a wonderful guy, he had fallen ill, and he wasn't doing that well. And I made the decision to move out on my own, to begin my own studio. So that there were a lot of different things that happened then, but primarily it was a way. Teaching was a way for me to keep my hand in it, and be able to practice the craft. I always tell people when they ask me, what to do when they're in their 20s, I say, fall in love with the art of acting. Learn about the spirit of the art. Learn about, what it's like to really just have the attention completely off yourself, where you're able to freely respond to the people that you're working with and the circumstances of the given imaginary circumstances of the play or the film or show that you're doing. And, it's freedom. It really is about freedom, to freely respond and not really care, what it may look like or how you're going to be viewed, to be free of that, to be able to just spontaneously respond to the people you're working with in the given circumstances of the play.
And during the 8 years you spent running and teaching at the acting studio, as I mentioned, you acted or directed in something like 80 plays. How did you find the transition to screen acting? What were some of the difficulties or even culture shocks of moving from theatre into TV and movies?
Well, because Sandy Meisner's work was really, if you look at the students that worked with him, it's a who's who of American film and television. You can look at the people from the Actors Studio and the people that emanated from the group theater in the 30s, the people that came from Lee Strasberg's tutelage, the people that came from Sandy Meisner's tutelage, Stella Adler's tutelage. They all, it was an organic process. So everybody was learning how to be truthful, to be really personally truthful in the given circumstances of a play or a film or a television show. So the transition to film, although it was different from stage work because you didn't have to project as much, I worked in a lot of small houses, so it really wasn't that huge of a problem for me. I remember when I did On the Waterfront in 1995 on Broadway. That was difficult for me for a number of reasons. One of them was that I only had 3 days to prepare the role because I replaced somebody. But the other reason was because it was such a big house, and I had not played that big a house since I was in college. So I was much more, trained to do more intimate work for the camera. That's really what my foundation, the focal point, the center, the core, the heart of my foundation was to begin with.
Through the 90s, you entered TV like most actors with cameos on many different shows like LA Law, Law & Order, Diagnosis Murder, NYPD Blue, ER, and many others. Can you pinpoint a moment or a certain show that you were on where you started to build some confidence because of the amount of shows you were starting to appear in?
I can't pinpoint a moment, no.
No?
It just happened over time. I'm a journeyman actor, you know. That's how I look at myself today. I'll always be that. You know, no matter what I'm blessed with or given, it's just over time. Like Sandy Meisner used to say, after a while you'll catch up with yourself. You know, you wind up catching up with yourself. You wind up getting to a point where you're really in your shoes. You're not that nervous energy, that nervous anxiety of, will they like me? Will I be good enough? Will this be the right thing? It sort of goes away. Now that's not to say that I don't have tension before I do a scene, or that there are certain scenes that I get that I have, you know, I'm a little nervous before I do it because I'm not sure, you know, about things. I still have that. And some people said, Denzel Washington said in an interview one time that he said they say that's a good thing, you know. People say if you have a little hit, you know, like that, it's actually a good thing. It kind of reads into the scene. So, you know, I don't know, but over a long period of time, and when you do a lot of work, you just kind of get to a point where you go, well, this is it. You know, this is, but it's always fresh, see, because it's always new material, and hopefully, you know, the material is good. I've been very lucky in that regard. I've been given really good material by great writers.
Now that you've got Orange is the New Black and it's going into season 3, do you feel yourself starting to get a bit more confident, or do you still think confidence can be a little bit too dangerous if there's too much of it?
I've had all the false pride kicked out of me a long time ago. I mean, I'm not really worried about that. I don't make too much of myself. I'm not under any false delusions about who I am, or I'm just a journeyman. You know, I'm a guy, you know, I got a number on a ticket, and I show up down in the docks, and they say, okay, number 22, come on in, and I go in and I lift the crates. You know, I go to work. So I don't look at it like, wow, I'm really cool. I'm on this hit show. I look on it like, wow, I got a great opportunity to be part of a great ensemble. I can make a contribution here. You know, if I play my cards right, meaning if I do the preparatory work for my scenes and I do the work that I was taught to do, you know, I got a chance of making a difference in people that watch the show and entertain them. You know, I don't make a big deal out of the ego stuff. You know, that's a one-way road to hell for me. So I just stay away from that.
On paper, the highlight of the 90s for you looks to be 12 episodes of NYPD Blue in between 93 and 99. Why do you think that role was a recurring one? Why do you think they liked your character so much?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you know, the way that they wrote Roberts, that was a very tumultuous character arc. You know, there was a lot there. Here's a guy, you know, breaking the rules in the police department, dealing with snitches, addicts, you know, being dishonest with his bosses, you know, corrupt. There was a lot of things, and there was great humor immersed in it. So, you know, the writing was great. I just happened to be, you know, be there. I'm just very grateful that I had the opportunity. That was David Milch and Stephen Bochco. They really gave me a good shot there in the beginning, and I attribute a lot of my work to those guys because that's where I got noticed. That's where I became people became aware of me in the industry. People, directors and writers, and actors, and the public, they became aware of me. So it gave me, that led to a lot of other work, and it kept me going. So just very grateful to be part of that whole process.
And through the 2000s, you kept getting cameo roles on more and more shows like, Buffy, Boston Public, Jag, Cold Case, Without a Trace, Criminal Minds, Numbers, and there's quite a few others. What were, as a journeyman, like you said, what were the positives and negatives for you getting all these cameos and all these appearances in all these different shows? There were a couple that you got recurring roles in, like Weeds and, as I mentioned before, NYPD Blue, but most were 1-2 episodes. Were there positives and negatives of getting your name around all different sets?
Well, I would just, I looked at it pretty simply, Elaine. I mean, I really, I didn't make a big deal out of it. I was excited each time I got hired, But I looked at it like, wow, I got another gig, I was just grateful to be working, and the positives were, was that I got a chance to go in there and practice my craft, I got a chance to get paid to practice my craft, and that I still feel that way. It's like that's a real honor for me. That's a real that doesn't happen to a lot of people. I'm not under any misconceptions. That there's a lot of talented people in my business, a lot of talented actors and actresses. So I feel really lucky, and I'm not under any delusions. So the positives in those years was getting to work. The negatives was that it was tough to make a living. So I always had 2, sometimes even 3 jobs that I was doing to keep food on the table. I drove cabs, I drove limousines, I worked for 10 years on the graveyard shift, setting up interviews on the news for the early morning national and local news in the United States. Dug ditches, painted houses, you name it. I did a lot of stuff. And somehow I just kept alive. A lot of guys that were in my position, they didn't they didn't last. They didn't want to keep going. For me, I always had the feeling I don't know what else to do. I'm an artist. I mean, if I'm not acting, I have to write, or I have to paint, or I don't know what else to do, really. I like helping people, but there's really nothing else I can do. So I had to stick it out. I really didn't have a choice. It wasn't like I was sitting there making a decision. I didn't have a choice.
You mentioned you worked the graveyard shift setting up interviews for news broadcasts and things like that. Did you ever think about getting on the other side of the mic and being an interviewer?
Yes, I've thought of that. Sometimes I've thought of maybe doing some things on streaming video, on just setting it up independently and doing some interviews with people I respect. But that's something I have to do when I have less on my plate. That's something I would really want to do well. I wouldn't want to do it half-assed. Dick Cavett was a good interviewer. So I don't know. There's some Charlie Rose, a great interviewer. I think he's probably the best that I've seen. But I don't have the chops to do that now. That would be something that would be a complete, departure.
It's not the passion.
It would be fun, but
Yeah.
it's
not the passion for you. I can understand that. You've all
I started years ago. I did journalism when I first started. In my first 2 years of college, I used to interview artists. I interviewed Richie Havens and Melanie, and I used to interview writers. A fellow who was a wonderful writer. He wrote a whole expose on South Africa, I did a lot of writing in the beginning. I started off as a journalist, but that's a completely different thing than creating art. That's a whole different ballgame.
You've also been in some really big movies, like Aaron Brockovich, Ocean's 13. How does the process differ for you between TV and film? Is there a distinctive difference?
Less and less, I mean, I just worked with Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson, True Detective. I mean, those guys are consummate film actors. They're the best around. It's less and less, man. I mean, the television, I hear it, on sets. I hear it on the street. TV is film now, in many respects, and even a lot of the films. I mean, a lot of great films, they're done quickly. That you don't have time. That they're not taking the time to do, to take a whole day or 2 days to do a scene. They're doing films quickly. So the margins are getting tighter. Or how do I want to say it? The distance between the two is getting less and less and less. So I think that would be my answer to that. Now, that being said, you get a master filmmaker, and they take their time and they want to do a film that's going to really last. They have their way of working. It might be old school, and you'll still have a process that will be like it was 20, 30 years ago. But now it just seems faster. It seems faster, and that this is coming from me, who my preponderance of experience has been in television. But I've been very lucky because I've had great writers and very talented directors, and a lot of the stuff that I've done, people have talked about that it's close to, being film quality. So,
do you think that's a good thing that the gap is shrinking between TVs and movies?
As long as there's great care taken in the creation of it, yeah.
Okay.
As long as the artists that are working on it don't, just start looking at it like they're gonna just, take shortcuts. It's, yeah. I mean, it gives a lot of people an opportunity to express themselves. A lot more people than before.
Now you've hit the jackpot. I know you talking to you for the last half an hour. You probably don't see it that way, but you've hit the jackpot now with Orange Is the New Black. We kind of touched on this before with the whole confidence question. Is there a sense of relief now that you're a main character on a big show and you don't really have to go out and audition quite as much as you used to? Is there that sense of relief, or do you still feel a bit of pressure going into, as you mentioned, every scene, working every day, going into every scene?
I don't really feel that. I remember Henry Fonda. They used to say that he would always, after he finished his last project, he'd say, "Oh my God, I'm never going to work again." And I feel that, we just finished our season 3, and I said, "Oh my God, what's going to happen now?" And that's just from being an actor for so long, and being out of work, going through long periods of unemployment, and you think, gee, I really hope that doesn't happen again. So I don't look at it like jackpot. I mean, I look at it like I'm grateful that I'm on this show. I'm grateful that I've been able to work consistently over so long a period of time, and I just want to keep working. I just want to keep working. To me, it's like going to work. I look at it like a job. It goes back to my blue collar roots. It's work your ass off, tell a few jokes, and go home for dinner.
I read in a previous interview about your scene in Orange is the New Black where you had to draw on past experiences in order to fulfill the role. It was the scene when Taylor Schilling's character Piper was in the special handling unit, and you also mentioned the bond that you and Taylor had to build leading into that scene. In a show where there are a lot of intense situations and maybe some scenes that you do need to pull the heartstrings a bit and go back into your past and bring that to the present, how important is that bond with every single cast member in order to keep that intensity during filming and in order to make it believable for the viewer?
That's real important. That's the internal work that I have to do. I have to make sure that the circumstances that I'm living through, the relationship that I'm having with that person, whether it be Taylor or another character in the show, that it's authentic to me, that I'm living truthfully through that circumstance, that I'm having an authentic relationship with that person, not just something that's, that doesn't exist or that's superficial, but that I have an authentic experience, because that's going to read. And I don't know, I just do it, and a lot of it I just work off of them. We have such a talented crew of actors and actresses. I mean, sometimes it's like, they show up and they just bring so much. I mean, all the work that I've done, sometimes I throw it out. I just go, wait a minute, I'm just going to work off what they're giving me here. They're giving me so much. Let me just, and then the scene becomes new and it's fresh. Sometimes I need to keep, there's always a lot that's maintained unconsciously from what I've done, but, the bottom line, when you get there, I really think it's great to not know what you're doing. Is to not really know what you're doing. Is to get there and not have the answers, not know how it's going to go, so that you're basically letting it happen right there.
So you're as surprised as the viewer.
That's right. That's right. So then you have something that's really happening, and that's what you try for, to see it. So far, so good.
So how much of that comes down to acting, and how much of it comes down to working in your particular way, where you need to, I guess, act as least as possible, but more be honest as a human being and have that human emotion? Where do you draw the line between being a person on set and having the natural emotion that any human would have, and being an actor and having to put it on?
You don't draw any lines. I mean, you just, like I said, you show up. For me, I just do, just do the preparation and work really hard at that, and then you show up, and if you're lucky, you don't know what the hell you're doing, and you live through the process of the scene. That's if you're lucky. And if you're not, then you're holding and you're trying to guide certain moments, and then you have to work to let go of that and let it happen in a way that's going to be, fresh and spontaneous, where you're not pushing anything, I was listening to Robert De Niro talk about acting, and it was like a thing I saw. It was like 30 seconds, but he said, sometimes, you do absolutely nothing. Just don't do anything, And I could give you, really bad news, a terrible circumstance. I could just come in and give you really, really bad news, and you'd have the same expression on your face as if I just said, hey, you want to go down to the corner and get a soda? So he said sometimes it's just best just not to do anything. And he said he has to work against that, So anyway, so it's you try to not lay anything onto it. You just try to show up and
not think about it.
Let the thing happen, and respond truthfully, and not act. Don't get caught at acting. You'll never get caught at it.
So the best actors are the ones who don't get caught acting.
Well, yeah, sort of. I guess, I don't know.
As an actor who has studied acting intensively, I want to ask you, your character on Orange is the New Black, Sam Healy, started off as a good guy. He was good friends with Piper. He showed compassion, empathy, and was a really well-liked character. He then suddenly changed, and we saw the jealous, kind of creepy side of him with his Russian wife, who doesn't really like him either, and his relationship with Piper also started to deteriorate. And then towards the end of the second season, we started to see the soft, passionate, caring side of Sam Healy again, with his group therapy, and his relationship started to build with a lot of the characters again. In your opinion, does this drastic change in character have more to do with your acting ability, or is it a result of the writers, directors, or is it a bit of both? You've tried all three of the kind of areas of working on a set. Where does it come from? Or do they just tell you on the day, look, we're going to make your character, I guess, bad today. Can you deal with it? How much do you attribute to you, and how much do you attribute to the writers and the directors?
It takes everybody. The people that really make everything work, the grips and the lighting technicians, the sound people, the camera people, the crew. It takes everybody. It really takes everybody to create, movies or television. It really takes everybody. So it's not one group of people, or it's not one person. It's never ever one person. So it's always everybody. Everybody is an equal part of the body,
And yeah, like more specifically on that drastic change in how the character's seen by the audience. How do you feel like that's a lot of acting, or do you feel the writing has a lot to do with it as well?
Well, the writing in Orange is superb. We have a crackerjack team, and Genji's at the head of it. I've said this many times. It's a lot easier as an actor to go to work knowing that you have writers and you have words that are going to carry you through the scene. And good writers, what they do is they create circumstances which basically are they're like emotional rivers, that you can just get in and you float downstream, You feel like you're being carried. And I've been very lucky to work with writers and people like David Milch and Genji Cohen and their writing teams, directors and the cast that they bring on board. I've been very lucky because that's what it feels like. It feels like, you know, you're in a wave, you know, and in the ocean it's just taking you. And some material that you get in my business, it's not like that, you know. Some material you really have to work to, especially if they don't want to change it, you know, if they don't want to change the different wording in the sentence, or you know, you have to work diligently to make it organic, or the style something is done in. But I've been very lucky that if an artist is working organically, if they're coming from their soul, and as an actor, and you get those words, and that's really gold, you know. It's really a wonderful thing to have, you know, because it supports the creative, inspirational process.
So what can we look forward to for Sam Healy in season 3? It's a little bit of a wait for us here in Australia, or everywhere even. It's about 6 months away. So what can you give us a little bit of a taste of what we can expect?
I can't tell you what you can expect. I can tell you that the writing is just as good, if not better, than the first 2 seasons.
Better. Yeah.
The directors did a wonderful job. You know, some of the storylines are just terrific. I mean, I really don't have anything other than glowing stuff to say about it, because it's not just because I'm in it, but because I really believe that it's a wonderful piece of art. Hopefully we'll go for a good long time.
And you've been in the industry for quite a while, quite a long time. What would your ideal role be, or who would you like to portray that you haven't already?
Wow. I don't know, I'd like to play a priest. I never did that. I'd like to play a priest. Good film. I'd like to do some work, you know, some, like an espionage thriller, playing an operative, or, you know, somebody who's supporting a mission, something like that. There's a lot of roles, really. I'd like to play an artist. There's so many roles. I worked so hard for so long. I was in the beginning to create a strong foundation. There's a lot of roles I'd like to play.
Now, are you ready to get into some fan questions? We've got about 5 fan questions to get through.
Sure.
Okay, so the first one is from Leslie Feninga from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She asks, you seem to play a lot of law enforcement roles. What things have you learnt about law enforcement over the years that a normal person might not know?
That it's a really hard job. Yeah, I really have a lot of respect for them. I really feel that they're, you know, what they do is exceedingly difficult. I've learned a lot about that type of power, you know, that people can abuse that power very easily. But mostly, I just I have a lot of respect. You know, those guys and gals, they really work pretty hard at what they do.
Susan Johnson Davenport from Sugar Grove, Virginia wants to know, is it weird to be working with mostly just women?
No, not at all. It's actually nice. I love my cast. They're really good. We have a very good relationship, all of us. It's a very solid quality, warm group experience. So no, I don't have any weirdness at all about it. Matter of fact, I'm glad that they have the women are running the show and really the most important piece of it, because they've had a very rough time. Women have had historically a terrifically difficult time in entertainment, and still do. So I'm glad to be part of it for that reason.
Susie Khadija, I hope I'm saying that right, from Philadelphia, wants to know, how has your presence on the show affected your life? Do you get recognized more? Do people yell Mr. Healy? And do you think people have a negative reaction to you in your personal life because of how well you portray your character and your misogynistic views on the show? How do you react to that?
Say the last part again.
Do you think people have a negative reaction to you in public because of how well you portray Mr. Healy on the show with your misogynistic views? How does the public react to that when they see you or if they recognize you out on the streets?
Right. The first two, I do get recognized more. There's more of a, people say, hey, you're really terrific, or we really love the show. And that's something that most people are very respectful. Every once in a while you get somebody coming up and, sitting in the car and they're knocking on the window asking for a picture, but that's pretty rare. No, most of the people, I think at this point, because I've played so many guys that were ethically challenged, they know that I'm acting. So I don't really get that sense of,
intimidation,
dislike. Yeah, they don't. They're not really. They're respectful for the most part.
Brandy Pomranki from Michigan wants to know what makes lesbians so dangerous.
Well, I don't think they are dangerous. I rather like them myself. I think it's a great storyline, though, and one that's brought a lot of humor and a lot of really cool scenes. So it's acting.
It's acting. That's a fair point. Yeah. And finally, Susan Gucciana Walker from Abilene, Texas, writes, what has been your best and favorite role on television and or movies, and why that role? Whether it be on Orange is the New Black or any of your other acting roles, which has been your favorite?
They all are. Really, I don't really have a favorite. I'm really, like I said, I'm a journeyman, so the one I'm doing today, it's kind of like being in the circus, and that's really the truth for me. They're all my favorites. I really, and I think that that's important artistically too for me. It's a point that I like to make, is that I really devote myself to what I'm doing, and so it becomes this wonderful experience for me that I dedicate myself to fully. And at the end of the day, it's a really solid experience for me. It's a really full experience for me humanly. So they're all, kind of like my favorites. I don't. It's funny, people. They ask me that a lot, or what's your favorite scene, and I really don't. I really truly don't have them. I like it all.
You just love working.
I loved it all. I just love working, man. I just love doing it.
Thank you very much, Michael. It's been a pleasure talking to you. You're very real. You're very, you know what's going on in life. So it's good to know that you're so down to earth and that you're an honest actor. And thank you very much for talking today. I hope I haven't taken up too much of your time.
No, you haven't. It's been a pleasure, a real privilege for me. Thanks for having me on your show, pal.
Good luck for season 3.
Thank you very much. Have a great day, okay?